Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. I was reborn on the very day before I was supposed to join my fiancé, Jason Miller, at his army unit. In my previous life, I had eagerly brought along every bit of my family's fortune to follow him as a soldier's wife, only to stumble upon him in bed with my so-called best friend, Linda Moon. Linda, with her round belly, was wearing a cheap floral dress I had bought for her. She cried, begging me to let her have him. As for Jason, the man I had loved for 15 years, the one for whom I had gone up mountains and down to the countryside, he only coldly handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter of accusation against my parents. They had conspired with him, pushing me into the labor farm, draining me of every last drop of blood. It wasn't until that quiet man, Andrew Harris, gave his life to save me that I finally woke up. This time, as I stared at the family heirloom jade bracelet on my wrist, one that held supplies worth billions, I laughed bitterly. Father, you vile woman, your days are numbered. This time I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. And as for that man, Andrew, I want you to live well and stand at the very top of the world. I, Valerie Stone, had already decided I would no longer hand over my last wealth to marry Jason Miller. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was my mother's anxious gaze. On the wall calendar, the large portrait of the great leader clearly showed the date, July 28, 1976. I was truly back to the day before I was supposed to follow the army to Northfield. Mom, I'm not going, I said. My voice was unusually firm. My mother froze, the enamel cup in her hand nearly slipping to the floor. What did you just say? You're not going. Jason already gave up his high school graduation to labor in the countryside. He suffered so much. Now, after so many hardships, he finally gets to serve in the army. And you? I'm not marrying him. I cut her off, the storm in my eyes surging. The enemy of my past life, Jason Miller, isn't worthy of me. Just yesterday, I had still been basking in the joy of becoming a soldier's wife. But in a single night, I had gone from hell to heaven, then from heaven back into the abyss. In my past life, on this very day, I had carried the $200 my parents painstakingly saved, along with all sorts of ration tickets, and boarded the green train north. In return, I was met with betrayal and ruin. My best friend Linda Moon, the one I gave fabric to so she could have new clothes, the one to whom I gave up my chance to return home, had long been entangled with my fiancé Jason Miller. I would never forget the scene of pushing open the door and seeing that filth. Linda leaned into Jason's arms, her belly swollen, a triumphant smile on her face. Valerie, Jason, and I truly love each other. This child can't be without his father. Since your father pays me, let me have him, she said. And Jason, the man I had secretly loved since girlhood, only frowned in annoyance and threw an envelope right in my face. Valerie Stone, we're done. If you dare to make a fuss, I'll hand over this letter and your parents' lives will be ruined too. That letter was proof my parents had pulled strings so I could join the army. He used their safety to threaten me, forcing me to walk away with nothing, swallowing all the bitterness. In the end, they joined forces to accuse me, shoving me into the labor farm, while they lived lavishly on my money in my house, leading a life others envied. And in the fire that came later, the quiet man who had always silently helped me, Andrew Harris, was crushed by a falling beam while saving me. He never woke up again. Before his death, he held me tightly and whispered his final words. Valerie Stone, live well. In this life, I will not only live well, but live for Andrew Harris too. I'll live brilliantly. Mom, don't worry. I'm not saying this out of anger, I said, gripping her calloused hand, hiding my hatred deep inside, smiling to reassure her. I've thought it through. There would be no happiness in marrying Jason Miller without children, so why should I lower myself? My words were half truth, half lie. With my mother's temper, if I told her about that filthy affair, she would storm over to the Miller house with a rolling pin in hand. The Millers and the Moons were our neighbors in the same block. We saw each other every day. It wasn't the time to turn against them yet. I wanted to wait until the moment I was at my most glorious, so they would fall into the deepest agony. It's good you understand. It's good you understand, my mother said, her eyes red as she hugged me tightly. My poor daughter. It's my fault. I should never have agreed to this marriage back then. I gently patted her back, though my eyes were icy cold. In this life, I would never let anyone harm my family again. The silver bracelet on my wrist, which looked ordinary, grew faintly warm. This was the heirloom of the Stone family. In my previous life, I never knew its secret, not even at my last breath. But after being reborn, I discovered it held a vast inner space piled high with endless supplies. From rice and flour to silk and brocade, from rare medicines to gold and jewels. Even advanced technology that wouldn't exist until 15 years later. With all of this, what did I have to fear? Jason Miller, Linda Moon, just wait. This time, I'll make you taste what it feels like to fall straight from the clouds into hell. Right then, a sharp knock came at the door, followed by Linda Moon's soft, sugary voice. Valerie, are you home? I brought over the new dress I sewed for you. Try it on. So fast, she couldn't hold back anymore. The corners of my lips curled into a cold smile. In my past life, she had used the same excuse, bringing a dress to spy on how I was preparing to follow the army. She even casually told me she'd been nauseous, throwing up, and unable to eat. I had been so foolish then, worrying for her, even making her brown sugar water to drink, never realizing she was flaunting her pregnancy to my face. Valerie, it's Linda. Let her in, my mother said, completely unsuspecting as she went to open the door. Wait, Mom. I pulled her back, stepping up to the door without opening it. I raised my voice just enough to carry through. Linda, sorry, I'm not feeling well today, so I won't try on the dress. Oh, by the way, I suddenly decided not to follow the army anymore. I have the train ticket to Northfield. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Silence fell outside. I could almost picture Linda's face, shocked yet thrilled. She must have been thinking how stupid I was to hand over such a heaven-sent opportunity with my own hands. After a long moment, she spoke again, her voice tinged with suspicion, but also secret delight. Valerie, you really mean it? You're really not going to marry Jason anymore? Of course, I replied with a faint smile, my tone laced with mockery. I'm not worthy of him. You and he are a much better match. The ticket's on my table. You can find a way to take it yourself. I'm tired, so I'll sleep now. With that, I ignored whatever happened outside, returning to my room and locking the door. I knew Linda would stop at nothing to get that ticket. And this ticket would be the first grand gift I gave her. The Northfield Army District wasn't a place just anyone could reach. Without the proper documents, even with a train ticket, an unmarried woman like her would only be treated as a vagrant and arrested. Linda Moon, enjoy the surprise I've prepared for you. This is only the beginning. I lay on the bed, but my ears stayed alert to the sounds outside. As expected, not long after, I heard Linda chatting with my mother. She must have found some excuse, saying she wanted to help me pack my luggage, tricking my mother into opening the door. And then I heard the sound of her careful footsteps sneaking into my room. On the table besides the train ticket, I had deliberately placed an empty envelope. On its cover, I had imitated Jason Miller's handwriting, scrawling the words, "A gift for my beloved Linda." In my previous life, Jason had used a letter to sever all ties with me. In this life, I would also use a letter, but to open the curtain on their downfall. Linda Moon clutched the ticket and the envelope as if they were priceless treasures. Her steps grew light as she hurriedly bade farewell to my mother and slipped away. The moment she left, I stirred on the bed as if just waking from sleep. Mom, where's Linda? I rubbed my eyes. She's gone. She said you were sleeping and didn't want to disturb you. My mother replied, carrying in a bowl of 8 freshly steamed eggs. Come eat them while they're hot. My child, if you say you won't go, then you won't go. Aren't you afraid of what Jason will think? He won't think anything, I said softly, lowering my gaze to hide the glint of ice in my eyes. By now, he and Linda were probably already dreaming together about the beautiful future awaiting them. I ate the eggs slowly, my mind already calculating my next move. Jason Miller and Linda Moon, those two shameless traitors. I would make sure they were utterly ruined. But I couldn't rush. I had to proceed step by step, letting them fall the hardest at the height of their arrogance. First, I had to solve my family's situation. Our background was considered unfavorable. My father had once been a petty bourgeois, And though he had responded to the government's call by surrendering most of our fortune, in these times, people everywhere still looked down on us. Jason's father was the deputy logistics director of the Northfield Military District. Years ago, our two families had arranged this marriage because my parents wanted me to have protection, so I wouldn't be bullied. But now that the engagement had collapsed, the Millers would never let us off easily. I had to find my family a new support, one far stronger than theirs. In my mind appeared the face of Andrew Harris, his sharp features, his steady, resolute expression. In my previous life, he had died saving me. In this one, I would save him and marry him. Andrew Harris was the youngest regiment commander in the Northfield Military District. A hero with countless battle achievements and boundless prospects. Unfortunately, his cold and reticent personality made him poor at socializing. Nearing 30, he remained unmarried. More importantly, I knew a secret. He had been searching for his long-lost younger sister for many years, and the token of hers he sought was a wolf-toothed jade pendant identical to the one he always wore. By a stroke of fate, after my rebirth, I discovered inside the hidden space of my jade bracelet a pendant exactly like his sister's. Surely this was destiny itself. But Andrew was in Northfield. I needed to think of a reasonable way to appear before him. As I was lost in thought, Auntie Wong from the neighborhood came running over, face full of gossip, speaking breathlessly to my mother. "Oh dear, Mrs. Stone, have you heard the engagement between Valerie and that Jason boy? It's broken." My mother's face instantly went pale, but in my heart, I let out a cold laugh. So fast, it seemed the Millers couldn't wait to cut ties with us. "Auntie Wong, who did you hear that from?" I asked, feigning shock as I stood up. "Who else? That Miller woman, of course." Auntie Wong pursed her lips. "Just now she was shouting all over the neighborhood, saying you despised Jason for having no future, that you wanted to climb higher, and broke off the engagement yourself. She even said, you sold the train ticket to follow the army." Ha! A perfect example of the guilty striking first. They wanted to dump all the filth of this broken engagement on me. She's lying. My whole body trembled with anger. My eyes instantly reddened. It was Jason who betrayed me. He's the one who wronged me. He and my best friend Linda Moon. I stopped halfway, covering my mouth as though I had slipped up. Tears fell at just the right moment, my expression the very picture of someone grief-stricken wanting to speak, yet choking back the words. This was exactly what stirred curiosity and pity in outsiders. What? That girl Linda. Sure enough, Auntie Wong took the bait, her eyes round as bells. She and Jason Miller. Good heavens, what shocking news. "Please, Auntie Wong, don't say nonsense," I quickly refuted, my voice still choked with emotion. "Linda is my best friend. She would never do something like that to me. As for the train ticket, I saw she wanted to go to Northfield too, so I gave it to her. I didn't sell it for money. How could the Millers slander me like this?" The more I defended Linda, the more Auntie Wong suspected there was something hidden. That was the art of words. Sometimes denial made people believe more than admission. I deliberately staged this act in front of her, so the neighborhood loudspeaker herself would spread exactly what I wanted everyone to know. And indeed, after offering me a few words of comfort, Auntie Wong bustled off. In less than half a day, the whole neighborhood would know I had been jilted, betrayed by both my fiancé and my best friend. I had already seized the battlefield of public opinion. Now all that remained was to wait for news from Linda Moon. By the timing, she must already have boarded the train to Northfield. Jason, meanwhile, was likely still in his unit, dreaming of the bright future he and Linda would share. I drew from my jade bracelet a recorder, a product from 15 years ahead, compact and with excellent sound quality. I cleared my throat, and imitating Linda's voice, both aggrieved and boastful, I spoke into it. "Jason, I got Valerie's train ticket. Soon I'll be at your unit. She said she wasn't worthy of you and stepped aside to bless us. Don't worry, the baby in my belly will be born healthy. From now on, our family of 3 will never be apart." Then I switched to Jason's cold, heartless tone. "Good. If you're here, stay in the communal housing she applied for. Whatever of hers you like, just use it. No need to be polite." This fabricated dialogue was enough to become the final nail in their coffin. I carefully put away the recorder, the corners of my lips curling into a chilling smile. Jason Miller, Linda Moon, just wait. When your so-called happy news spreads through the military district, you'll become rats everyone wants to crush. That's when I'll come to Northfield myself, bearing a wedding gift for you too. And at the same time, to meet the man who truly belongs to me. The hook was already cast. All I had to do was wait for the fish to bite. 2 days later, the front of my house was bustling. As expected, the Millers came of their own accord to break off the engagement. Jason's mother, a plump woman who in my previous life had always wagged her finger at me, now stood at the gate, hands on hips, spewing spittle as she scolded. Mrs. Stone, I don't mean to sound harsh, but your daughter Valerie's gone too far. My Jason has never wronged her, yet she says she won't marry him and then turns around and sells the train ticket to follow the army. Isn't that a slap in the face to our family? Neighbors gathered in a circle, pointing and whispering about us. My mother's face turned deathly pale, her body trembling. But because she felt guilty, for it was indeed I who first said I wouldn't marry, she couldn't find a word to argue back. I took a deep breath. Under the eyes of the onlookers, all waiting eagerly for the show, I stepped out slowly. Mrs. Miller, I said, my voice not loud, but carrying clearly to everyone present. You claim I sold the train ticket. May I ask, do you have any proof? She faltered for a moment, then stuck out her neck. Proof? Who needs proof? Everyone here knows it's true. You just looked down on our Jason, thinking he had no future, so you wanted to climb higher. I met her gaze, my eyes steady, and enunciated each word. All I know is that Jason Miller and I are not suited for each other. Not suited? In what way? Not suited, she snapped. I say it's you. It's because he already has someone else in his heart. I cut off Mrs. Miller's words, sweeping my gaze over the circle of neighbors. My voice carried just the right blend of grievance and sorrow. Mrs. Miller, you're my elder. Normally, there are things I wouldn't want to say, but today, since you've made such a scene, I'm forced to make things clear. I paused deliberately, giving everyone a moment to take in my words before dropping the bombshell. Jason Miller and Linda Moon, do you really not know about them? The courtyard instantly erupted into noise. Mrs. Miller's face darkened like pig's liver. She clearly hadn't expected me to dare say such a thing aloud. You're spouting nonsense. Shameless slander, she shouted, jabbing her finger at me. Linda and my son are innocent. Don't you dare smear their names. You know better than anyone whether I'm lying, I replied coldly, curling my lips into a sneer as I pulled something from my pocket and held it high. This is the handkerchief Linda gave me just days ago. Look, she embroidered Jason's name on it. Tell me, have you ever seen an innocent girl give such an intimate item to a man? That handkerchief was one I had borrowed from Linda herself. She had spent weeks embroidering it as a love token for Jason. Yet I revealed it first in front of everyone. The neighbors craned their necks to see, eyes widening at the clearly stitched name. Well, would you look at that? Someone muttered. Linda, who always looks so well behaved. Who would have thought? Murmurs spread like needles piercing Mrs. Miller's skin. Her face shifted from green to white. She could hardly stand upright. This must be a misunderstanding, she stammered. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, once Linda comes back from Northfield, won't it all be clear? I said softly, twisting the knife. Oh, but I nearly forgot. By now, she should have already arrived in Northfield, reunited with your good son. I deliberately emphasized 2 words. Stepped aside, and blessed, dripping with sarcasm, leaving no pretense. Mrs. Miller froze in disbelief. She couldn't fathom why I, the girl she used to toy with at will, had suddenly become so sharp, armed with evidence she knew nothing about. Watching her flounder gave me no satisfaction, only a cold, implacable hatred. This was still far from enough. I wanted the Miller family to collapse completely. Just then, a dark green military jeep screeched to a halt outside the compound. It spun around and stopped squarely at the gate. The door swung open and a young officer in a crisp uniform stepped out. 2 stripes and 1 star gleamed on his shoulders. His stance was steady as a pine, his face stern, eyes sharp as a hawk. His commanding aura silenced the gossiping crowd in an instant. Everyone was stunned by this man's presence. Even I froze, for the one who appeared was Andrew Harris. Why is he here? Shouldn't he be in Northfield right now? Andrew ignored everyone else and walked straight toward me. His deep, penetrating gaze landed on my face, carrying an emotion I couldn't decipher. You are Valerie Stone. His voice was low, magnetic, like the strum of cello strings. I nodded instinctively, my heart racing wildly. He was younger than I remembered, but the pressure radiating from him was even greater. His eyes seemed to pierce straight through me. He wasted no words, giving me a direct command. Come with me. I blinked, caught off guard. Where to? The Civil Affairs Bureau, he replied tersely, dropping a bombshell even more shocking than mine. Not only I, but everyone present was left gaping in astonishment. Mrs. Miller looked as if she had seen a ghost, pointing a trembling finger from Andrew to me and stammering. You too, what? What is this? Andrew Harris shifted his sharp gaze toward Mrs. Miller. His voice was calm, but carried a weight of authority that brooked no resistance. Comrade Valerie and I were introduced by the organization. We have been thoroughly vetted. If the Miller family dares to harass her again, it won't just be a matter of breaking an engagement. He paused, his eyes suddenly cold as steel. I'll personally report it to the Military Discipline Committee and investigate those who abuse their positions to pressure a female comrade. Mrs. Miller's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the ground, her face drained of all color. I looked at the man before me like a god descending to rescue me, and waves surged in my heart. What is going on? Since when were Andrew and I introduced by the organization? Could my rebirth have created a butterfly effect? But whatever the reason, this turn of events was the greatest fortune for me. Meeting his deep eyes, I nodded firmly, my voice ringing out. All right, I'll go with you. Marrying you has been my wish for 2 lifetimes. Andrew Harris, this time let me be the one to protect you. I won't let anyone harm you, not even a little. Under the astonished gazes of the entire compound, I followed Andrew and climbed into the military jeep. The engine roared to life, leaving behind the stares of shock, envy, and disbelief. Inside, it was quiet, only the low growl of the engine filling the air. I stole glances at the man beside me. He stared straight ahead, driving with a serious expression. His profile was both strong and flawless, his fingers gripping the wheel with visible tendons full of power. This was the man I had loved across 2 lifetimes. In my past life, he always appeared when I was most desperate, silently handing me a bun, or helping me carry a heavy sack. He spoke little, yet always gave me the warmth I needed most. I once thought he only pitied me, but in the final moment when he shielded me from the falling beam, I finally saw the love in his eyes so deep it could never fade and the reluctance to leave me behind. So he had always loved me. Why? Why did I only see it at the end? Unable to hold back, I asked the question lodged in my heart. Why Andrew Harris? Why do you want to marry me? His eyes stayed on the road, his voice steady. Because I've been waiting for you for many years. My heart lurched. Waiting for me? He pulled the car over at a bend, yanked the handbrake, and turned to lock his deep gaze on me. Yes, I've always been searching for you. From his pocket, he took out a wolf-tooth jade pendant strung on a red cord. Under the sunlight, it glimmered with a gentle light. His eyes, usually calm and cold, now flickered with tension and hope. The girl I've been looking for, he said, should carry a jade pendant identical to mine. My heart pounded uncontrollably. Almost without thinking, I reached for my wrist. The cold silver bracelet was there. Could it be? My hands trembled as I unfastened it. Inside the band, hidden so well it could easily be missed, was a small wolf-tooth jade pendant exactly like his. I lifted the bracelet with shaking hands. Andrew's eyes lit up at once, filled with joy, excitement, and the relief of finding something long lost. He clasped my hand tightly, pressing the 2 pendants together. They matched perfectly. Found it? I finally found it, he whispered, and on his usually stern face bloomed a rare, almost childlike smile. My mind went completely blank. What is happening? Why am I the one he's been searching for? My name is Andrew Harris, he said clearly, each word distinct. 16 years ago, I was called Andy. During the Great Flood, my parents gave their lives to save others. An uncle pulled me from the water. He gave me a jade pendant and told me to find the girl who had the other half. He said, When I grew up, I was to marry her in his place and protect her for life. That uncle was my father? I asked in shock. Andrew nodded. Yes. After I joined the army, I kept searching for him. Recently, I finally discovered his name, Thomas Stone. He worked in the Capitol. This time, I came back to fulfill the promise I made all those years ago. I was stunned. I never imagined that between Andrew and me lay such a bond of fate. My father had never mentioned this. Perhaps he thought it was just a casual request at the time, not worth remembering. But Andrew Harris carried it in his heart for 16 years, searching for me all that time. 16 years. No wonder the moment he returned, he came straight to me, already knowing everything about the Miller family. Yes, he said, simply nodding. I couldn't let you suffer injustice. That single sentence shook me more than any sweet talk could. My eyes burned hot. All the humiliation and misery of my past life suddenly had an outlet. So I had never been alone. All along, someone had been steadfastly searching for me, longing for me. Andrew Harris. I lifted my head to meet his deep, steady gaze and said, seriously, I agree to marry you. Not because of a promise and not out of gratitude, but because I love you. That last part one kept inside my heart. The corners of Andrew's lips finally curved into a distinct smile. With clumsy but gentle fingers, he wiped away the tears at the corner of my eyes. Don't cry. From now on, I won't let anyone bully you again. The Jeep started up once more, this time heading straight for the Civil Affairs Bureau. I knew that from today my life would turn to a brand new page. As for Jason Miller and Linda Moon, their play was about to begin. I pulled out the recorder and pressed play. The intimate conversation between Linda and Jason filled the small cabin. Andrew's expression turned cold instantly. What is this? A wedding gift I'm sending them, I said with a smile, then told him my entire plan. He listened in silence for a moment before saying, that's still too light. I saw the sharp glint in his eyes and knew at once we were the same kind of people. With enemies, neither of us would ever show mercy. Don't worry, I said, leaning back against the seat as the scenery slipped by outside the window. This is only the beginning. The marriage registration procedure was completed much faster than I expected. Because of Andrew's special status, we went through the fast lane. In less than half an hour, 2 bright red marriage certificates were placed into our hands. I stared at the black and white photo, the two of us standing side by side. It felt like a dream. His face was still as cold as ever, yet in his eyes there lingered a hint of gentleness. Even he might not have realized it. As for me, I smiled with crescent eyes, a joy rising from the depths of my heart, something no acting could ever fake. Congratulations, Comrade Commander Harris. Congratulations, Comrade Stone, the civil affairs officer said solemnly, raising a hand in salute. Andrew returned a standard salute, then handed me one of the certificates. Keep it safe. Yes. I tucked it carefully into the pocket closest to my heart, where it still carried the warmth of him. When we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, Andrew glanced at his watch. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I have to return to the unit in 2 hours. Where do you want to go? Home, I answered without hesitation. I couldn't wait to show my parents this certificate and ease their worries. At the same time, I wanted to see the Millers' reaction. Now, the moment we walked hand in hand through the compound gate, the effect was explosive. Everyone who saw us looked as if they had seen ghosts. Auntie Wong was so dramatic. She covered her mouth with her hand, then leaned toward my mother and whispered, Mrs. Stone, is it true? Did Valerie really marry Commander Harris? My mother straightened her back, her face shining with pride as never before. She took the marriage certificate from my hand and raised it high, displaying it like a medal for everyone to see. Yes, that's right. My daughter today has officially become the revolutionary wife of Comrade Andrew Harris, commander of the Tiger Regiment of Northfield Military District. The crowd instantly exploded. Oh my God, the Tiger Regiment. That's a hero's unit. The Stones really had fortune fall right into their lap. I told you Valerie was blessed with good luck. Look, didn't she just happen to meet someone even better? Only a few days ago, these same people had pointed fingers, piling scorn onto my family while we were down. Now, one after another, they plastered flattering smiles on their faces, spilling out endless congratulations. This was reality. When you're weak, villains flock to tear you down. But when you're strong, the world greets you with warmth. As for Mrs. Miller, when she caught sight of the marriage certificate, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed in a faint right at the gate. The Miller household fell into chaos immediately. I looked at it all coldly without the slightest ripple in my heart. This was only the beginning. When we got home, my father, Thomas Stone, stared at the certificate for a long while before finally sighing and patting Andrew on the shoulder. Andrew, from now on, Valerie is entrusted to you. Don't worry, sir, Andrew replied firmly. With my military honor, I guarantee she will never suffer even the slightest grievance. That one word, sir, made my father's eyes gleam. He clasped Andrew's hand, and the two men began talking about the flood years ago, about fallen comrades. Their conversation was heavy, honest, and solemn. Meanwhile, my mother pulled me into the bedroom. Valerie, tell me the truth. You and Commander Harris, what is this all about? I still can't rest easy, so I told her exactly what Andrew had explained to me, of course, leaving out the part about my rebirth. After listening, she held me tight, crying and laughing at once. So that's it. Truly heaven's will. The good deed your father did back then has finally been repaid. Once I soothed my parents, I checked the clock. It was time. I picked up the phone and dialed straight to the logistics office of the Northfield Military District. Hello, connect me to Comrade Jason Miller. Not long after, his impatient voice came over the line. Who is this? It's me, Valerie Stone, I replied evenly. Jason froze. A second later, his tone turned mocking. Why are you calling? Have you come to your senses and want my forgiveness? No. I smiled faintly, each word clear. I'm calling to congratulate you. Congratulate me on what? On you and Linda Moon receiving a special investigation package from the Military Discipline Committee. I didn't give him a chance to react, just hung up. Then I retrieved the recorder and anonymously sent the file inside through the military's internal channels addressed to both the Military Discipline Committee and the political commissar of the Tiger Regiment. I knew Andrew's unit was the strictest of them all, tolerating not even a grain of sand in its eye. Corrupt behavior and attempts to cheat the soldier quota. Families like Jason's and Linda's, once investigated, would face consequences beyond imagination. Only after doing this did I feel the fire in my chest ease a little. Andrew was about to leave. Standing at the doorway, his eyes lingered on me with deep reluctance. Once I finish matters at the unit, I'll come back to get you. All right, I nodded, reaching up to straighten his slightly rumpled collar. Don't worry about me at home, but you must also take care of yourself in the unit. All right, he murmured and suddenly pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. His embrace was broad and warm, carrying the faint scent of tobacco mixed with sunlight. Wait for me, he whispered by my ear before striding away. I stood at the door, watching his figure fade into the golden sunset until it was gone. But I knew we would see each other again soon. Next time, I would stand proudly at his side, not just as his wife, but as a soldier's comrade in arms, sharing his battles shoulder to shoulder. For now, though, one last act still needed to come to an end. Linda Moon, my dear best friend, your celebration is over. Your beautiful dream will only last for exactly 1 day later. Linda Moon carried the train ticket I had given her and rushed eagerly to Northfield. She thought that waiting for her there would be Jason Miller's warm embrace, and the ultimate glory of becoming a soldier's wife. But reality slapped her heart in the face. The moment she stepped off the train, before she could even find Jason, she was stopped at the station by the inspection team. Comrade, please present your documents. I am here to join my fiancé Jason Miller, Linda said confidently, holding out the train ticket. The inspector glanced at the ticket, then at her, his eyes turning icy. To follow a soldier requires an official transfer order and an introduction letter from the unit. A train ticket alone is not valid. Comrade, come with us. Linda froze dumbstruck. She was escorted to the guest house for questioning. No matter how she tried to explain that she was Jason's fiancée, that the ticket had been given to her by Valerie Stone, no one believed her. At that time, A young unmarried woman traveling alone to a remote border military district was already suspicious enough. Moreover, her stammering excuses and lack of evidence only made things worse. News of this quickly reached Jason Miller. When he received the notice and rushed to the guest house, he was utterly stunned. He hadn't expected Linda to be so reckless as to come alone, nor that she could be so foolish as not to even know the most basic procedures for following a soldier. The moment she saw him, Linda ran into his arms like he was her savior and burst into tears. But Jason shoved her away, his face twisted with disgust and irritation, because at that very moment he himself was barely hanging on. That morning, the regiment's political commissar had summoned him and scolded him for an entire hour. The fabricated recording had spread all the way up to the higher authorities in the district. Even though the Military Discipline Committee hadn't reached a conclusion yet, the label of improper conduct and inappropriate relations with a female comrade had already been slapped firmly onto him. His chances of promotion that year were completely ruined, and the cause of it all was the useless woman standing before him. "What are you doing here?" Jason growled through clenched teeth. "I wanted to give you a surprise," Linda whimpered, aggrieved. "Valerie gave me the ticket. She said she would step aside and bless us. She wanted to destroy us." Jason nearly raised his hand to strike her. "Do you realize? Because of you, our affair is now known across the entire military district. I'm ruined because of you." Linda's face went pale, disbelief written all over her. That can't be Valerie. But she was no longer the naive Valerie Stone they thought they could manipulate at will. Jason finally realized he had fallen into a massive trap. The moment Linda accepted that ticket, Valerie's scheme had begun. Just then, the guest house door swung open. Andrew Harris's bodyguard, Sergeant Jang, entered with 2 comrades from the Military Discipline Committee. Their faces were cold and expressionless. "Jason Miller, Linda Moon," one of them said sternly. "Our investigation confirms the 2 of you have engaged in an improper relationship, a serious violation of military discipline. You are to come with us immediately." Linda's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor. Jason's face turned ashen. He knew it was over. What awaited them would be strict disciplinary punishment, possibly even expulsion from the army and being sent back to their hometowns. And all of it was thanks to Valerie Stone. Jason's eyes flickered with boundless hatred. "I learned of all this from Andrew himself. On the second day after he returned to his unit, he called to tell me he was safe and, almost like telling a joke, mentioned the fate of Jason and Linda. They were under disciplinary detention, awaiting investigation. Jason's father had tried to pull strings for him, but Andrew's father had personally blocked him. Later, I discovered that Andrew's father was a high-ranking leader in the military district. So, they got off lightly," I answered coldly. Andrew's voice carried a hint of amusement. "That's why I added a little seasoning." "What kind of seasoning?" I asked. "The letter you gave to Linda Moon," he replied. I froze for a moment, then burst into laughter. The letter I had forged in Jason Miller's handwriting, gifted to my beloved Linda, was now the final nail in their coffin. Irrefutable proof, impossible to deny. "Well done, Commander," I praised. "Call me Andrew," his deep, gentle voice came through the receiver. "Andrew," I whispered. My cheeks burned. "Valerie," he said softly. I filed the report. "At most, in half a month, you'll be allowed to follow the army. Wait for me." The call ended, but my heart was restless. The thrill of vengeance mixed with the anticipation of a new life made me even more eager for Northfield, the land where the man I loved and the future I dreamed of awaited me. I began preparing to follow the army. With the space inside my jade bracelet, I hardly needed to pack anything. Rice, flour, vegetables, even pork and beef, all stored inside forever fresh. All I really needed was to pack a few sets of clothes and some daily necessities just for appearance's sake. Seeing me busy each day, humming while I worked, my mother's laughter grew brighter. My father used his connections to inquire about Northfield's conditions, and even specially prepared a few books for me on farming and animal husbandry. Northfield may be tough, but it's vast and sparsely populated. There will be opportunities. You and Andrew can live there without worry. Don't fear hardship." "Yes, I know," I said, hugging his arm warmly. Having my family's support truly felt wonderful. Just as I was happily waiting for notice to join the army, someone unexpected appeared. It was Linda Moon's mother. She looked haggard, with a few new strands of silver in her hair. The moment she saw me, she fell to her knees with a thud. "Valerie, please, I beg you, forgive Linda. She knows she was wrong. For the sake of the bond between our two families all these years, can't you spare her this once?" Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded. But I felt nothing. The bond between families? Where was that bond when Linda and my fiancé rolled around together? Where was it when they conspired to send me into the labor farm to suffer torment? "Auntie, what are you doing? Please stand up," I said, stepping back to avoid her kowtow. "Your daughter did wrong, and she deserves to be punished. You've come to the wrong person." "No, Valerie. Only you can save her." Mrs. Moon clutched desperately at my trouser leg, looking up at me with imploring eyes. "All you need to do is tell the army it was all a misunderstanding, that you voluntarily gave Jason up to Linda. Then they'll release her. Please, Valerie." I almost laughed out loud at the shamelessness of her words. At this point, instead of letting her daughter admit guilt and repent, she wanted me to lie and take the blame for them. Typical logic of a thief. "Auntie, did you forget? Linda is already pregnant." My voice was icy. "She and Jason carried on while he was still engaged to me. That's a fact. Nothing can change that." "That was Jason's fault," Mrs. Moon cried instantly, shifting all responsibility. "He seduced my daughter. She's naive. That's why she was deceived." "Is that so?" I arched a brow. Funny, because I heard Linda was the one writing him love letters, embroidering handkerchiefs, even seeking him out at his unit. Those were details Andrew had shared with me. When the Military Discipline Committee investigated, they had found an entire stack of Linda's shameless love letters hidden under Jason's bed. Mrs. Moon froze, clearly shocked that I knew everything so precisely. "Valerie, even so, Linda has been your closest friend since childhood. You grew up together like sisters. Can you really bear to see her destroyed?" "Closest friend." I repeated slowly, the words dripping with irony. "I treated her as my dearest friend. But what did she treat me as? Was I just a fool? A stepping stone for her to climb higher?" I bent down, locking eyes with Mrs. Moon, and spoke each word clearly. "Auntie Moon, go back and tell Linda this. Everything she's suffering today is what she brought upon herself. The way she treated me before, I'll pay it back to her doubled. And this is only the beginning." My voice was quiet, but sharp as ice cutting into bone. Terrified by the hatred in my gaze, her lips trembled, and she could not utter a word. I straightened up, turned my back on her, and slammed the door shut. Outside, her cries and curses tore through the air. I leaned against the door, closed my eyes, and once again the memories of my darkest days at the labor farm surged forward. The freezing rains, the endless hard labor, the public humiliations and denunciations. And Linda Moon, wearing the dress I had bought her, clutching the arm of the fiancé who once belonged to me, looked down from above as she sneered. "Valerie Stone, look at yourself now. You're no better than a dog." No, I would never again let her rise above me. I would drag her and Jason Miller into the mud, where they would remain forever. A few days later, the unit announced its decision. Jason Miller, for serious violations of military discipline and corrupt conduct, was expelled from the army and forcibly sent back to his hometown. Linda Moon, for sabotaging the marriage of a soldier, was sentenced to 6 months of re-education through labor. Even though Jason and I had not yet officially registered our marriage, the engagement still made it a serious offense. Jason's father also received a major demerit, and was forced into early retirement for his failure in supervision and judgment. The Miller family collapsed completely. When the news spread through the compound, the whole neighborhood buzzed with gossip. The Millers packed up and slunk away in the night like stray dogs without an owner. I stood at the window watching their pathetic silhouettes and drained my cup of tea. This moment was truly satisfying. At the same time, my notice to follow the army arrived. On the night before my departure, my father solemnly handed me a wooden box. "Valerie, this was left by your grandfather. He said it should be passed down only to the most outstanding of the Stone family." I opened it and gasped. Inside were several ancient yellowed books bound in silk thread, along with a thick stack of property deeds, imperial recipes, and the herbal classic Heavenly Crafts. I stared in shock at the old texts, then at the deeds scattered across the country, even a few in Hong Kong. Valerie, your grandfather once served as an imperial chef. This is the true wealth of the Stone family, my father said with quiet pride. I never had the ability to preserve it. Now I entrust it all to you. When you reach Northfield, live well and remember you are the daughter of the Stone family. I nodded hard, my eyes red. To think the family I had always believed poor was hiding such an immense fortune. Carefully, I stored everything inside my jade bracelet. With these in hand, I felt even more certain that in Northfield, Andrew Harris and I would build a world of our own. The next morning, I said farewell to my parents and boarded the northbound train. This time, unlike in my past life, I felt no fear or unease, only eager anticipation and happiness. Northfield, here I come. Andrew Harris, here I come. After 3 days and 2 nights rocking on the green train, it finally pulled into the capital of the Northfield Military District. The moment I stepped off, I spotted the familiar tall, straight figure waiting at the platform. Andrew Harris, dressed in plain clothes, still stood out among the crowd. He must have been waiting for a long time. His military cap was dusted with a thin layer of snow. The moment his eyes fell on me, once stern, they lit up instantly. He strode over quickly, naturally taking all of my luggage into one hand, and with the other, he grasped mine tightly. Are you cold? He asked, wrapping my slightly chilled fingers completely in his warm, broad palm. No, I whispered, my heart warming instantly. I shook my head, but inside I felt as if a small furnace had been lit, an unfamiliar, comforting warmth. His palm was burning hot as he held mine, guiding me out of the station. Our home was an apartment in the family housing provided by his unit. It was only a modest 1-story house, not large, but he had arranged everything neatly and cleanly. The windows gleamed, the stove burned brightly, and the moment I stepped inside, the warmth rushed out to drive away the cold. On the table, a hot meal was already waiting. A plate of braised pork, a dish of stir-fried Napa cabbage with a sweet and sour flavor, and a steaming bowl of egg drop soup. I learned from the unit's head chef, Andrew Harris admitted, scratching his head in slight embarrassment. It was the first time I had ever seen him look shy. I don't know if it suits your taste. Watching his tall frame awkwardly standing before me in a loose apron, I found him impossibly endearing. I picked up a piece of pork and placed it in my mouth. The meat was braised until tender, savory, and perfectly seasoned. It's delicious, I said sincerely. Only then did he let out a breath of relief, ladling me a bowl of soup. Eat, then rest for a while. I'll head back to the unit afterward and leave you here to settle in. After our meal, he returned to the base, and I began exploring the place I would now call home. Though simple, it was filled with signs of his thoughtfulness. The bedding was brand new, the hot water flask was full, and even a precious apple sat on the table. In times like these, fruit was a rare luxury. From the space inside my jade bracelet, I retrieved the gift I had prepared for him. A set of handmade cotton underclothes, a pair of cloth-soled shoes sewn by hand, and a jar of medicinal balm I had crafted from herbs. I knew his body must have been riddled with old wounds from years of training. After finishing, I began to plan for the future. Northfield had plenty of land and fuel, but the climate was harsh. Many vegetables and fruits couldn't be grown here. In the family housing, soldiers' wives ate the same 3 staples every winter: radish, cabbage, and potatoes. But I was different. Not only did I have endless supplies from the bracelet, I also had the ancient manuals my father had entrusted to me. In Heavenly Crafts and Wonders, there was a technique for building warm houses that used sunlight and geothermal heat. Even in the dead of winter, fresh vegetables could be grown. If I could put this into practice, it wouldn't just improve life in the district. It would also bring me recognition and valuable resources. That would be a tremendous support for both me and Andrew. Once I had thought of it, I set to work. Over the following days, I familiarized myself with the family housing environment, built relationships with the neighbors, and prepared materials for the greenhouse. The wives of the soldiers were curious about me, especially when I shared fresh tomatoes and cucumbers. Valerie, where on earth did you get these tomatoes? They're so fresh. To eat juicy cucumbers in times like these, it's like a dream. I smiled and explained. I brought seeds from the capital and tried planting them indoors. I didn't expect them to grow. It was a flimsy excuse, but when I generously shared seeds and seedlings, everyone chose to believe me. Soon, my reputation as a skilled grower spread throughout the compound. Even the political commissar of the Tiger Regiment, the very leader of Andrew Harris, came to our home, eager to learn. I seized the chance to present my greenhouse idea. After listening, the commissar slapped his thigh in excitement. Comrade Valerie Stone, you truly are talented. If this greenhouse can be built, we'll solve a major issue for the district. Whatever you need, the unit will give full support. With the military's backing, the greenhouse project officially began. Though Andrew never said it aloud, I could see the pride in his eyes. After training each day, he would quietly help me, carrying bricks and mixing mortar, never once complaining of fatigue. Watching his sweat-drenched back, my determination only grew stronger. I knew our good days were only beginning, but I hadn't expected trouble to come so quickly. That day, while I was at the construction site directing the framework of the greenhouse, a woman dressed in stylish clothes suddenly appeared. Her makeup was flawless, and she walked arrogantly into the construction site, surrounded by a small group of followers. "You're Valerie Stone?" she asked, looking me up and down with eyes full of disdain and hostility. "You're the one who stole Andrew from me." The way she came, it was clear she was here to provoke me. I studied the woman quickly, sorting through the information in my mind. Her name was Vivian White, a pillar of the district's performing troupe, and the daughter of the deputy commander of the military district. For years, she had claimed to be Andrew Harris's fiancée, and the entire district had assumed they were a pair. In my past life, she often obstructed me, though back then, I was just a pitiful girl living off Andrew's sympathy. She hadn't even bothered to deal with me directly. But this time, I was Andrew's legal wife, and Vivian White wasted no time in confronting me. "Yes," I said evenly, setting down my design plans and meeting her eyes without flinching. "I'm Valerie Stone, Andrew Harris's wife, but I don't recall stealing Andrew from anyone." I deliberately emphasized the words wife and Andrew, and her face instantly paled. Furious, Vivian jabbed a trembling finger at me, but for a long moment no words came out. You're just some country bumpkin. What right do you have to marry Andrew? What tricks did you use to seduce him? What did you rely on?" I let out a soft, mocking laugh. I relied on the fact that we were formally introduced through the organization and married properly. "Comrade Vivian, if you have objections to our marriage, you're free to file a report with the organization. But making a scene here, disturbing the unity of military families, that wouldn't look good, would it?" My reasoning was clear, leaving no gaps for her to exploit. The soldiers' wives who had gathered to watch whispered among themselves. "She's his legal wife with the certificate to prove it. Vivian is being way too domineering. Andrew never promised her anything." Hearing the murmurs, Vivian's face grew even darker. One of the female performers beside her quickly stepped in to defend her. "Don't get cocky, Valerie. Only our Vivian and Commander Harris are truly a match made in heaven. Who do you think you are? Just some woman who climbed up by trading favors. What's there to be proud of?" I fixed them with a cold stare, knowing I couldn't let this pass. Today, I had to establish my authority. My lips curved into a frosty smile. "Then tell me, what favors did I supposedly trade? I'd like to hear." Caught off guard, the performer stammered, unable to give a straight answer. "Well, anyway, I stepped closer, my tone cutting. "Casual gossip may pass, but words carry weight. If you can't explain yourselves today, don't blame me for going to the troop's leadership and letting them teach you what defamation really means." The sharpness in my eyes silenced them completely. They froze, cowed into silence. Vivian, shaken by how hard I was to handle, trembled with rage. Suddenly, her eyes gleamed as she pointed toward the greenhouse framework behind me and shrieked. "Oh, I see you're clinging to that shabby shed to win the commissar's favor, just so you can stay by Andrew's side. Let me tell everyone this thing will never work. Growing vegetables in Northfield. Pure fantasy. She's a fraud. She wanted to destroy me on professional grounds. Fraud or not, that's not for you to say. I replied calmly. Once the greenhouse is complete and vegetables grow, the truth will speak for itself. Fine, Vivian sneered coldly. I'll be waiting. When nothing grows, let's see if you still have the face to stay by Andrew's side. With that, she flounced off, her entourage trailing behind her like a flock of defeated roosters. Watching their retreating backs, my gaze hardened. Vivian White, do you really think this is over? How naive. Today you've delivered yourself right to my door. Just in time to give me the perfect opportunity. That night, when Andrew Harris came home, his expression was unusually serious. Vivian White came to see you today? He asked. I nodded, my hand pausing as I ladled soup into his bowl. She didn't do anything to you, did she? His brows furrowed as he took my hand, scanning me up and down with worried eyes. I'm fine, I said softly, warmth blooming in my chest. She just shouted a few things. Said I was a fraud and that the greenhouse would never work. Andrew's frown deepened. Don't pay her any mind. Just focus on the greenhouse. Whatever happens, I'll bear it with you. I know. I looked at him, then suddenly smiled. But I don't want to let this slide so easily. His gaze sharpened. What do you want to do? I want her to lose and admit it. I want her to pay for what she did today. My eyes glinted with mischief as I laid out my plan. After listening in silence, the corner of his lips curved into a wicked smile I had never seen before. Do it. The look in his eyes was full of indulgence and affection. My wife isn't someone just anyone can bully. With his support, my confidence soared. Vivian White, get ready. Soon news spread throughout the military district. Comrade Vivian White of the performing troupe and I, Valerie Stone, had made a bet. The wager was whether my greenhouse could produce its first harvest of fresh vegetables before winter set in. If I won, she would have to apologize to me publicly in front of the entire district. If I lost, I would leave Andrew and walk away from Northfield for good. The bet exploded across the district like wildfire. Everyone thought I had lost my mind. How dare I challenge the deputy commander's daughter? But only I knew victory was already mine. Because this greenhouse wasn't just a structure. It was a resounding slap in the face to everyone who had looked down on me. Under the scrutiny of the whole district, construction of the greenhouse moved forward at astonishing speed. Using the knowledge from heavenly crafts and wonders, combined with modern architectural principles, I designed a structure far sturdier, brighter, and better insulated than anything this era had ever seen. Next came seeding and cultivation. From my bracelet space, I chose the highest yield, cold-resistant seeds, and nourished them with a special solution. By the very next morning, tender green shoots covered the soil, brimming with life. Everyone who came to see it was stunned, whispering that I must be some kind of fairy who could turn stone into gold. Vivian came once. Her face was stiff with shock, but her lips still sneered. These are just seedlings. Who knows if they'll survive long enough to bear fruit? I didn't bother arguing. The truth would speak louder than words. Under my meticulous care, the crops thrived. Cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, vegetables unheard of in winter, grew heavy with fruit. Finally, before the season's first snowfall, the greenhouse celebrated a magnificent harvest. Baskets overflowing with vibrant greens and bright reds were carried out and laid before the entire district. The crowd erupted. My God, it's real. They actually grew. Unbelievable. This means fresh vegetables in winter from now on. The commissar gripped my hand, his voice trembling with excitement. Comrade Valerie Stone, you've made a tremendous contribution to the district. A tremendous contribution. I smiled and shook my head, my eyes searching the crowd until I found her. Vivian White stood at the very back, her face chalk white, her body swaying as if she might collapse. I walked toward her slowly, each step pressing down on her fragile pride. Comrade Vivian White, I said, standing tall before her. Now, do you still think I'm a fraud? She bit her lip, silent. According to our bet, isn't there something you should do? I pressed further. Her eyes burned with humiliation and unwillingness. To apologize publicly to a rival like me was worse than death for her. At that moment, Andrew stepped up beside me and clasped my hand. He didn't say a word, but his presence was the strongest support I could ever ask for. All eyes around us shone like spotlights on Vivian White. At last, she could no longer withstand the pressure. Tears welled in her eyes as she forced out, I'm sorry. Her voice was so faint, I pretended not to hear. What was that? I asked flatly. Vivian snapped her head up, glaring at me with venom. Valerie Stone, don't push me too far. Too far. I laughed softly. When you humiliated me, when you slandered me, did you ever think you were going too far, Vivian? Today, I want you to understand Valerie Stone is not someone who can be bullied. Under the crushing weight of the crowd's gaze, Vivian was left with no choice but to apologize to me publicly in front of the entire military district. Her words were half-hearted, dripping with resentment, but her dignity was shattered all the same. From then on, she never dared to provoke me again. As for me, Valerie Stone, thanks to the success of my greenhouse, I became famous overnight. I was no longer just another soldier's wife, but a figure admired across the district. I became the idol of the other military spouses. I even started training classes on cultivation techniques, sharing everything I knew without holding back. Before long, every household in the compound had fresh vegetables to eat in winter. My life settled into a steady rhythm filled with purpose. My bond with Andrew Harris grew ever deeper. He was still a man of few words, but he showed his love in actions, remembering my preferences, silently massaging my shoulders when I was tired, stepping forward as my shield whenever I was wronged. Once, using herbs from my bracelet space, I cured a long-standing illness of a senior commander. Grateful beyond measure, he used his connections to help Andrew find his long-lost family. It turned out Andrew's biological father was a highly influential figure in the capital. From then on, Andrew's life took a new turn. With both his battlefield merits and his family support, his rise through the ranks was unstoppable. In the end, he stood at heights I had never dared dream of in my past life. And I, using my knowledge and the resources of my space, established a pharmaceutical factory and a large-scale farm, becoming the most dazzling businesswoman of our time. One in the army, the other in commerce. We supported each other, rose together, and became a legendary couple, admired by all. Years later, with silver in my hair and a house full of children and grandchildren, I often found myself leaning against Andrew's equally graying shoulder. I still thought back to that summer of 1976. It was the season when my nightmare began, yet also when my happiness was born. I was fortunate to have been reborn, but even more fortunate that in this life I had held Andrew's hand and never let go.